1994, Mr. Brian O'Neill. He rose from coach of the Toronto Marlboros to be vice president of hockey operations for the National Hockey League, while also serving along the way as general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs, Mr. Jim Gregory. He worked his very first game here at the Garden, and he was a very firm but civil force on the ice for the roughly 1,700 games that he worked as a linesman over 25 seasons. He is now the National Hockey League supervisor of officials, a member of the Hockey Hall of Fame, class of 1993, Mr. John D'Amico. For the first 4 decades of the Boston Garden era, the National Hockey League was a small and intimate lodge, a band of brothers from the cities of Boston and New York, Chicago and Detroit, Toronto and Montreal. The 7 honored opponents that we will now introduce variously represent the other 5 cities of the original 6. He started with the Rangers, but achieved fame leading the Toronto Maple Leafs to 4 Stanley Cups in the 60s. He was a family goalie in an age when men were men and goaltenders did not wear masks. A member of the Hockey Hall of Fame, class of 1976, Mr. Johnny Bauer. He will be remembered best for all the years he led his splendid New York Ranger teams into town when they featured Brian Park and Jean Martel. But before his coaching days, he was a feisty goalie for the Rangers and the Blackhawks. A member of the Hall of Fame, class of 1982, Mr. Emil the Cat Francis. He was the original European import, a total player from Czechoslovakia who won 4 scoring titles, 2 Hart trophies, and quite amazingly, given the tenacity of his play, 2 Lady Things. The essence of the Chicago Blackhawks of the 60s and 70s, and a member of the Hall of Fame, class of 1983, Mr. Stan Mikita. He'll be remembered as a sidekick of Gordie Howe on the Detroit Red Wings, and for later leading the Montreal Canadiens to a Stanley Cup that the Bruins believed they would win in 1971. But he should be best remembered as the Big M of the Toronto Maple Leafs, a member of the Hall of Fame, class of 1981, Mr. Frank Mahovlich. He was the cop on the beat, and he was probably born to play for the Boston Bruins. But he ended up in Montreal instead, where in 8 seasons he played for 5 Stanley Cup winners. Known as Fergie, he backed down from no one, a quality that Bruins fans have always appreciated. Now the player personnel director of the Ottawa Senators, Mr. John Ferguson. Our next guest has made this statement about this occasion, and I quote, "To the Boston organization and the great Boston hockey fans, I thank you for all my cherished hockey memories," unquote. It is the sort of elegant gesture that has marked his works on and off the ice for more than 40 years. The ultimate captain of the Montreal Canadiens and a member of the Hall of Fame, class of 1972, Jean Beliveau. And finally, he was the Ty Cobb of hockey, a player of such fierce will and skill that his presence on the ice was often literally chilling. They called him the Rocket. And it was evocative of his stature in his day. Time has diminished none of that. A member of the Hockey Hall of Fame, the class of 1961, Maurice the Rocket Richard. It has always been the special grace of Boston Bruin fans in this building to have a keen regard for worthy opponents who have conducted themselves with dignity. You have demonstrated that again tonight, one last time. So we thank you for that. And let us now have one last tribute to these representative hockey men.
And Derek, as the gentleman posed for a picture, you have to have a lump in your throat after you watch that.
I'll tell you, it brought memories back as a boy. I mean, wonderful working with Fred, Maurice Richard, Jean Beliveau, Ferguson, Mahavlich, Stan Mikita, the Cat, Johnny Bauer. Johnny Bauer, my mother loves Johnny Bauer. She just, yeah, I was on a breakaway one night and I got tripped from behind and I was going in, lost the puck, and Johnny Bauer threw both legs out. In those days, the moorings of the net were attached to it very strongly. I was going to break a leg, and he just stuck his legs out to save me. So my mother loves him ever since then.
And I know we both have a great deal of admiration and affection for our friend and colleague, Fred Cusick, and what an ovation he received. Derek, as you know better than I, he is one of the most modest, humble men that either of us know.
Sean,
and boy, wasn't that wonderful for Fred.
But I mean, it's something, a tribute he deserves. He's a shy man, and he's very, very, actually, I like to tease him of being a curmudgeon, but he is a sweet man, and he's a great guy to work with. A wonderful tribute to him, and well-deserved.
Indeed it is. We'll come back and talk with Bruins President Harry Sinden as the last hurrah continues from Boston Garden after this.
connector A to panel C.
Looks like you might.
Welcome back to the Boston Garden, the last hurrah at halftime. I'm joined